In the previous part, Sakayanagi finally exposed Hashimoto's betrayal after showing evidence of his secret meeting with Ryuen. As a result, Kamuro was officially expelled from the school. Before leaving, Kamuro left behind a message saying that she hoped the traitor would one day suffer the same fate. In this part, the competition at the training camp becomes even more intense. Horikita and Ibuki finally begin their special training with Ayanokoji after Ichika accepts their challenge. Ayanokoji also decides to act as their training opponent until the final day of the training camp. At the same time, the pressure from Ayanokoji's duel against Nagumo continues to increase. Meanwhile, Hashimoto begins to feel uneasy because the performance of both Sakayanagi's and Ryuen's groups keeps getting worse during the training camp. He feels that something suspicious is going on. Alright, without further ado, let us continue.
敵の敵は味方というわけね。
The story begins from Yamamura's point of view. As we already know, Yamamura is one of those students who rarely receives much attention from others. Even inside the classroom, her presence is hardly noticed because she usually keeps to herself and does not stand out very much. Yamamura has been used to living that way since childhood. She is not good at communicating and has always spent her days with very little social interaction. Even after entering high school, Yamamura still believed that her life would continue quietly in solitude, just as it always had. Still, something inside her slowly began to change. For the first time, Yamamura started feeling an emotion she had never experienced before. The feeling was so unfamiliar that even she found it difficult to put into words.
じゃあ、考えといて。
Several months later, the story continues after the latest special exam has ended. At that time, the second-year students were shocked by the news that Kamuro had been expelled from school. Many students were surprised because Kamuro was known to be very close to Sakayanagi. Quite a few of them never expected that she would be the one who ultimately had to leave the school. Although the incident caused quite a stir, the atmosphere did not last very long. Sometime later, school life returned to normal as usual. In the middle of that routine, Ayanokoji headed to the faculty room to meet Chabashira. At the time, the school was holding counseling sessions between teachers and students to discuss each student's plans for the future. That day happened to be Ayanokoji's turn to attend the session. Before moving on to the main discussion about his future, Chabashira first asked Ayanokoji what he thought about the school. She wanted to know whether there were any parts of the school system that he believed needed improvement, and whether he had any complaints about his school life so far. Ayanokoji calmly replied that he was fairly satisfied with the current system. Up to this point, he also did not feel that he had any complaints serious enough to bring up. After that, Ayanokoji instead mentioned the changes he had noticed in Chabashira. According to him, when he first entered the school, Chabashira's expression had looked much more rigid and less friendly. But now she could smile and seemed far more sincere than before. Ayanokoji even admitted that back then, he had never imagined that one day he would see Chabashira smiling the way she did now. After that, their conversation finally moved to the main topic, which was Ayanokoji's future. Chabashira asked whether he planned to continue his education at university after graduation or enter the workforce right away. In response, Ayanokoji explained that the path he would take in life would most likely be decided by his family. For now, Ayanokoji had not made any personal choice of his own. His only goal was to meet his family's expectations. Chabashira listened to his explanation seriously. As a teacher, she naturally did not want one of her students to choose the wrong path for his future. Because of that, she wanted to make sure that whatever decision Ayanokoji eventually made would truly be something he could carry through with full responsibility. For example, if his family asked Ayanokoji to continue his education at university one day, Chabashira wanted to know whether he would truly be ready to do it. Ayanokoji answered with confidence. If he had to continue his education at university, he was certain that he could get accepted into any university he wanted. That answer made Chabashira even more convinced that Ayanokoji must have received an extremely high-quality education since childhood. Even so, there was still one thing she wanted to know. She asked whether Ayanokoji actually had any personal desire or specific goal that he genuinely wanted to achieve for himself. Ayanokoji then shook his head. Up to this point, he still did not have any dream or personal goal that he truly wanted to pursue. Because of that, following his family's direction remained the only goal Ayanokoji could truly understand. Still, Ayanokoji added that if he ever found a dream or goal he genuinely wanted to achieve, he would definitely talk about it directly with Chabashira. Chabashira understood what he meant. From Ayanokoji's explanation, she concluded that the discussion about his future would probably need to be handled more seriously between herself, Ayanokoji, and Ayanokoji's family. Their conversation then moved on to another topic. Ayanokoji asked whether his father was really going to come to the school. Chabashira confirmed that he was. She explained that she had already contacted Ayanokoji's father by phone and had been told that the man was willing to come in person. At first, Ayanokoji's father had only planned to send a representative, but for some unknown reason, he later changed his mind and decided to come himself so he could discuss his son's future directly. Hearing that, Ayanokoji was quietly surprised. He began wondering why his father was willing to come all the way to the school himself. That sudden change of plans made Ayanokoji even more suspicious that there might be another purpose behind the visit. What exactly was his father planning? For now, even Ayanokoji did not know the answer. Several hours later, night arrived. Ayanokoji already had plans to meet Karuizawa in private. But while he was on his way to Karuizawa's room, he happened to run into Hashimoto inside the elevator. From his behavior, Hashimoto looked like he wanted to discuss something fairly serious. Because of that, Ayanokoji eventually allowed him into his room. Once their conversation began, Hashimoto immediately brought up the latest special exam, which had ended with Kamuro being expelled from school. According to him, Class A had lost because information had been leaked by a traitor. Hashimoto then revealed that his classmates had started suspecting him of being the person behind the betrayal. Even so, Ayanokoji did not show much interest in the topic. He did not even immediately ask why Hashimoto had chosen to betray his own class. Judging from his response, Ayanokoji seemed more interested in ending the conversation as quickly as possible. He said that he already had plans with Karuizawa. His words sounded like a subtle hint for Hashimoto to finish his business and leave. Seeing Ayanokoji's cold attitude, Hashimoto turned the question back on him. He wanted to know whether Ayanokoji actually understood the reason behind his betrayal. Ayanokoji answered calmly. In his opinion, Hashimoto's reason might have something to do with private points. It was possible that Hashimoto wanted a large personal reward, and a motive like that sounded reasonable enough. But that answer only made Hashimoto slightly annoyed. To him, the conclusion was far too simple. He did not want to hear a generic answer that anyone could come up with. Hashimoto wanted to know Ayanokoji's personal opinion honestly. Since he did not get the answer he was hoping for, Hashimoto finally decided to speak openly. He admitted that the real reason he betrayed Sakayanagi was because of Ayanokoji. It all started when Hashimoto once suggested that Sakayanagi bring Ayanokoji into Class A, but the proposal was immediately rejected. Hashimoto felt that his opinion had not been taken seriously, and from that moment on, he decided to act in his own way. That was the beginning of his betrayal of Sakayanagi. After hearing the explanation, Ayanokoji still responded calmly. He did not understand why Hashimoto was so determined to move him into Class A. Ayanokoji also made it clear that he was not as extraordinary as Hashimoto or other people seemed to believe. Even if he were actually offered a place in Class A, there was no guarantee that he would accept the invitation to join Sakayanagi's class. There were many things that needed to be considered, so a decision like that was not as simple as it seemed. Hashimoto understood that the situation was indeed much more complicated. After that, he began talking about the difficult position he was currently facing. After committing the betrayal, Hashimoto was certain that Sakayanagi would soon come after him. Even so, judging from his tone and attitude, he seemed to have already prepared himself to face Sakayanagi directly if necessary. From their long conversation, Ayanokoji began to understand one thing about Hashimoto. Hashimoto was the type of person who was basically unable to truly trust anyone. Perhaps that was why he always kept his distance from others and did not hesitate to make extreme decisions whenever he felt the situation demanded it. In short, time continued to pass, and Karuizawa would be arriving soon. Because of that, Ayanokoji and Hashimoto finally decided to end their conversation. Before Karuizawa arrived, Ayanokoji planned to go to the store to buy something. Hashimoto also happened to be heading to the same place. Since they were going in the same direction, the two of them decided to go together. After leaving the elevator and heading toward the store, Ayanokoji and Hashimoto ran into Morishita. Morishita immediately greeted them, but her tone sounded rather sarcastic. Without the slightest hesitation, she openly called Hashimoto a traitor. Naturally, Hashimoto immediately denied the accusation. According to him, there was still no clear evidence that could truly prove he was the person responsible for the betrayal. Even so, Morishita continued to insist that Hashimoto was the traitor. She did not stop there, and then accused Hashimoto and Ayanokoji of secretly planning something together. In her view, seeing the two of them in the same place was suspicious enough. She even described their meeting as some kind of secret consultation. Hashimoto looked slightly irritated, but he still tried to remain calm. He explained that their presence there was purely a coincidence, because both of them simply happened to be going to the store. But Morishita did not immediately believe his explanation. She continued accusing Hashimoto, before suddenly saying that she also wanted to go to the store to buy a few things. In the end, Ayanokoji, Hashimoto, and Morishita headed to the store together. Although the atmosphere between them felt slightly tense, there did not seem to be any other choice but to accept the situation. After arriving at the store, they unexpectedly ran into Yamamura, who was shopping. The moment she saw Ayanokoji, Yamamura immediately greeted him, although her voice sounded a little nervous. Ayanokoji had actually noticed earlier that Yamamura had been watching them for quite some time. He suspected there was a strong possibility that Yamamura had been ordered to monitor Hashimoto's movements. As usual, Yamamura's presence was extremely faint and easy to overlook, but Ayanokoji had always been used to paying attention to his surroundings, so he already knew that Yamamura had been staying not far from them for a while. While they were shopping, a small incident happened. Without asking for permission first, Morishita began putting several items into Yamamura's shopping basket. Seeing this, Ayanokoji immediately called her out. Morishita then explained that the items were simply recommendations from her for Yamamura. Ayanokoji calmly pointed out that, judging from her expression, Yamamura did not seem very comfortable with the way Morishita was treating her. Not long after, they ran into someone else Ayanokoji knew, Ryuen. With her usual way of speaking, Ryuen immediately recommended her favorite tea to Ayanokoji. She then teased him by asking whether the two girls with him were his new girlfriends. Of course, Ayanokoji immediately denied it. He then formally introduced Yamamura and Morishita to Ryuen. Hashimoto was also there, and took the opportunity to introduce himself as well. After greeting all of them, Ryuen left the store. Hashimoto looked fairly surprised to learn that Ayanokoji was acquainted with Ryuen. Even so, Ayanokoji explained that their relationship could not really be considered very close. After buying everything they needed, they finally went their separate ways and returned to their respective dormitories. A few days later, Thursday morning arrived. The students began preparing to leave for the joint training camp involving different school years. According to the original plan, each class was supposed to have one bus. Since there were 12 classes across 3 different school years, there should have been a total of 12 buses. But when the students gathered, they were surprised to see only 9 buses. After looking into it further, they discovered that the third-year students were only using 1 bus instead of the 4 buses they should have had. It turned out that only 5 students from each third-year class, Class A, B, C, and D, had been sent as representatives. This meant that only 20 third-year students were participating in the training camp. Meanwhile, on the bus Ayanokoji was riding, Karuizawa sat right beside him. During the trip, Karuizawa invited Ayanokoji to watch a movie with her. At first, Ayanokoji hesitated to accept the invitation, but after learning that the movie would be released on March 26th, while the school break before the new academic year was still ongoing, he eventually agreed to go with Karuizawa. After all the students arrived at the training camp, Chabashira began explaining the activities they would be doing. She first made it clear that this training camp was not a special exam. That meant the activities would not affect class points, and no one was at risk of being expelled from school. In short, the training camp was meant to be a more relaxed activity, where students from different school years could interact and build relationships with one another. Chabashira then explained that several students could not participate because they were sick, including Ichinose. This was one of the reasons why each third-year class had only sent 5 students as representatives. In addition, the school would form a total of 20 groups during the training camp. Each group would be led by a third-year student. After giving that explanation, Chabashira began handing out sheets showing the group assignments. As soon as she saw the list, Karuizawa seemed slightly relieved because she had not been placed in the same group as Ichinose. Ever since the latest special exam, Karuizawa still felt awkward whenever she thought about Ichinose. In some ways, she even seemed a little afraid of having to face her directly again. Although this training camp was not competitive like a special exam, the students still had opportunities to earn personal points. So even if a group lost a match, they could still gain some benefits from the activities. Even so, several students began to complain after seeing the group assignments. The problem was that, according to the data from the OAA app, Nagumo's group seemed to contain many highly capable students. Because of that, some students felt that the group distribution was not very balanced. Chabashira responded to the complaints calmly. She explained that even though Nagumo's group did have many strong students, that did not guarantee they would win every match. After all, this activity was not a serious competition. The main purpose of the training camp was simply to have the students complete various simple games while interacting with students from different classes and school years. The training camp itself would last for 3 days. On the first day, the students would take part in 5 matches. The second day would have 7 matches, and on the third day, they would participate in another 7 matches. That meant there would be a total of 19 matches. Each match would last for 30 minutes. During every session, each group had to choose 5 representatives to participate. The games prepared by the school were also fairly relaxed. Some of them included playing Uno, flower arranging, table tennis, and various other light activities. Because of that, Chabashira once again emphasized that this training camp was designed as an opportunity for the students to relax, while also building stronger relationships with students from different classes and school years.
一ノ瀬さんはどう出るかしら。
In short, the students finally arrived at the training camp. As soon as they got there, they were immediately directed to their assigned groups. Ayanokoji then learned that he was in the same group as Tsubaki, Kiryuin, Hashimoto, Yamamura, Morishita, Hiyori, and several other students. What was quite surprising was that Kiryuin had been chosen as the leader of their group. At the same time, Hashimoto had always been curious about Ayanokoji, so he immediately approached him now that they were on the same team. Ayanokoji himself was also fairly surprised when he saw the members of his group. Some of them were people who had previously gone shopping with him at the convenience store. Once everyone had gathered, they began a short introduction session. Interestingly, Yamamura had actually been sitting with them from the very beginning, but almost no one had noticed her presence. It was not because Yamamura was deliberately hiding or trying to avoid attention. Her presence had always been so quiet that people often barely noticed she was there. Situations like this had happened many times before. Even when surrounded by many people, Yamamura was still the type of person who could easily be overlooked. After the introductions were finished, Kiryuin decided to end the meeting because lunchtime was getting closer. Hashimoto did not agree with that decision. In his opinion, they should stay together and have lunch as a group. His reasoning made sense. By spending time together, they could understand the personalities and abilities of each member. That kind of information would certainly be useful later, when they had to decide who was best suited for certain matches. Kiryuin listened to Hashimoto's opinion, but in the end, she still chose to leave and did not join the rest of the team for lunch. Seeing her attitude, Hashimoto could only feel annoyed. To him, it was strange to see a leader who did not seem to care about her own group at all. Meanwhile, a small commotion also happened in another group because of Koenji. Just like Kiryuin, Koenji acted however he wanted. He simply left his group without giving any explanation or instructions, as if he had no interest at all in following the group's rules. Sometime later, since Kiryuin still had not returned, Hashimoto eventually took over the role of temporary leader. After that, they went to have lunch together as a group. In the more relaxed atmosphere, the conversation between them slowly became more comfortable. Hashimoto once again complained about Kiryuin's absence. He was worried that Kiryuin might later choose participants for the matches at random without truly understanding the abilities of each group member. According to Hashimoto, lunchtime like this should have been used to observe who was suitable for certain matches and who might not be a good fit. Since he was becoming increasingly frustrated with Kiryuin's attitude, Hashimoto eventually began to give up on the idea of winning the matches. He then suggested that they should treat all the upcoming matches as nothing more than entertainment, without pressure, and without being too ambitious about becoming the winners. Even though Hashimoto said that, he was actually still seriously observing the members of his group. He continued taking notes and gathering information about each person's strengths and weaknesses. He then sent all of that data to Kiryuin in the hope that she might eventually change her mind and start showing at least some concern for their group. In Hashimoto's view, a leader's attitude could greatly affect the motivation of the entire team. If the leader showed a strong desire to win, the other members would probably become motivated as well. On the other hand, if Ryuen continued acting as though the matches did not matter, the rest of the group would eventually treat everything as nothing more than a casual game for fun.
そういうものか。
After lunch ended, the students began going their separate ways and returned to their own activities. Meanwhile, Ayanokoji was asked to meet Nagumo. When he arrived at the designated location, Asahina was already there as well. During the meeting, Nagumo expressed his disappointment with the training camp. At first, he had hoped the event would be a special exam, rather than just the relaxed activity they were currently taking part in. The reason was that the third-year students were going through a very busy period. Many of them had already started preparing for their futures, whether for university entrance exams or job applications after graduation. Because of that, an activity that had no important effect on their grades or graduation was not very appealing to them. For Nagumo, a camp like this was simply a waste of time and not worth making a priority. The conversation between Ayanokoji, Asahina, and Nagumo then moved on to their plans after graduation. From there, it was revealed that Nagumo planned to continue his education at university. Nagumo also made it clear that he had no intention of using the special privilege given to Class A students after graduation. He was extremely confident in his own abilities and believed he could get accepted into any university without relying on the advantages provided by the school system. Even if he chose to enter the workforce immediately, Nagumo believed he could still get accepted anywhere he wanted. After discussing their future plans, the conversation shifted to the matches that would take place during the training camp. Asahina then questioned why Nagumo seemed so obsessed with Ayanokoji. In response, Nagumo asked whether Asahina knew the real reason Horikita had joined the student council. Asahina answered that Horikita probably wanted to follow in the footsteps of her older brother, Manabu. But Nagumo immediately rejected that answer. According to Nagumo, the real reason Horikita joined the student council was because of Ayanokoji. More specifically, he believed that Ayanokoji had deliberately placed Horikita there as a spy to keep watching his every move. The strategy might look simple from the outside, but according to Nagumo, its meaning was far greater than it appeared. Asahina was quite surprised after hearing that explanation. Nagumo then added that even though Ayanokoji always looked like an ordinary student, the truth was that he was someone who constantly operated behind the scenes. That was why Nagumo wanted to find out just how capable Ayanokoji really was. If Ayanokoji managed to defeat him one day, Nagumo was even willing to give him a suitable reward. In his view, Ayanokoji would deserve that reward if he truly managed to come out on top. On the other hand, if Ayanokoji lost, he would not have to pay anything and would not receive any punishment either. Nagumo then explained that this competition had nothing to do with their groups winning or with the results of the main matches. What he wanted to see was simply the individual result between himself and Ayanokoji. In other words, even if Ayanokoji's group lost, as long as Ayanokoji personally managed to outperform Nagumo, the result would still be considered a victory for Ayanokoji. This was purely a personal duel between the two of them. Even so, Nagumo still set one condition. During the training camp, Ayanokoji could not lose 3 times. If he ended up losing 3 matches, their personal duel would be considered over, with Ayanokoji as the loser. From the outside, that rule might seem more disadvantageous to Nagumo, because he did not ask for any reward if he won. But for Nagumo, the reward was not the main point. He simply wanted a clear result, showing which one of them was superior, while also finding out just how capable Ayanokoji really was. Nagumo then revealed that he had already coordinated with Ryuen beforehand. Because of that, he was confident that Ryuen would keep placing Ayanokoji in different matches throughout the training camp. That way, their personal duel could truly take place on many different occasions. Not long after, Ryuen finally arrived and immediately apologized for being late. After they talked for a few minutes, Ryuen said something quite surprising. She was willing to hand control of the group over to Ayanokoji. Officially, Ryuen would still appear to be the leader in front of the other members. But behind the scenes, Ayanokoji would be given the freedom to create strategies and make various important decisions for their group. Hearing that, Ayanokoji began connecting several events that had felt slightly strange from the beginning. He started to realize that the composition of their group might not have been a coincidence. After all, the members of the group were people who had previously been involved in the incident at the convenience store. If that was really the case, there was a possibility that the group composition had already started being arranged from the moment that incident happened. And the person most likely responsible for setting it up was Ryuen, but Ayanokoji calmly rejected Ryuen's offer to take control of the group. He preferred to let Ryuen continue handling all of her responsibilities as the leader. Hearing his answer, Ryuen simply smiled and seemed quite satisfied. After all, she knew that the battle between Ayanokoji and Nagumo would eventually happen regardless of who was leading their group. Seeing the situation, Nagumo then turned to Ryuen and invited her to participate in the matches as well. To make the offer even more appealing, Nagumo offered an extremely tempting reward, which was a ticket to move up to Class A. But as usual, Ryuen casually refused. She had no interest at all in having a duel with Nagumo. Even so, Ryuen responded to the offer with complete confidence. She said that if they ever truly fought one day, she was certain that she would not lose. For now, Ryuen still had no interest in fulfilling Nagumo's wish. Nagumo only smiled after hearing her rejection, as if he had already grown used to Ryuen repeatedly turning down his challenges. After their long conversation ended, they began preparing to go their separate ways. Ryuen was the first person to leave. Meanwhile, just before Nagumo and Asahina were about to part ways with Ayanokoji, someone suddenly appeared. That person was Ichika. Asahina immediately recognized her and assumed that Ichika must have extraordinary abilities for Nagumo to choose her as a member of his group. It turned out that assumption was wrong. Nagumo explained that he had not chosen Ichika to join his group at all. Ichika then explained that she had actually volunteered to join Nagumo herself. She even promised that she would become the biggest contributor to the group. According to Ichika, with her help, Nagumo's group was already guaranteed to win. Not long after, Asahina said goodbye and left first. Once only Ichika, Nagumo, and Ayanokoji remained, the atmosphere of their conversation began to feel slightly different. Ichika suddenly teased Nagumo by saying that she was certain Nagumo and Asahina were dating. Nagumo immediately responded by saying that his personal affairs were not something Ichika needed to know. But Ichika did not stop there. With a mocking smile, she said that if Nagumo really was dating Asahina, then Asahina would automatically become her rival. Because of that, their relationship was naturally something important for her to know. Hearing that, Nagumo responded coldly. He said that he was not interested in girls who like to pretend or constantly wear a smile like a mask. After hearing that rejection, Ichika immediately put on a disappointed expression. Even so, it was obvious that her reaction was only an act. She seemed to be playing a role and was not truly hurt by Nagumo's words at all. Growing more irritated by Ichika's behavior, Nagumo eventually decided to leave and left the two of them behind. Now, only Ayanokoji and Ichika remained. A few moments later, Ichika suddenly looked at Ayanokoji and asked why so many people disliked her. The question was delivered in a flat tone, but it was clearly not just casual conversation. Ayanokoji answered without hesitation. According to him, the main reason probably came from Ichika's own personality. The way she spoke often felt manipulative. Combined with her unpredictable behavior, those traits made many people become cautious or even uncomfortable whenever they interacted with her. Ichika stayed silent for a few moments after hearing that answer. Then she simply gave a small laugh, as if she did not care much about Ayanokoji's opinion. Instead of talking more about herself, Ichika shifted the conversation back to the relationship between Nagumo and Asahina. According to Ichika, there was something special between the two of them. Their relationship might not be romantic, but it clearly felt closer than an ordinary friendship. Ayanokoji agreed with that assessment. The relationship between Nagumo and Asahina did seem too close for them to be considered nothing more than fellow student council members. From their conversation, Ayanokoji also began to understand how Ichika had ended up in Nagumo's group. Since Ichika had volunteered to join on her own, Ayanokoji began to suspect that she had actually known about the training camp long before it happened. Ichika immediately confirmed his suspicion. She admitted that ever since she and Yagami first entered the school, Tsukishiro had already informed them about the schedules of various school activities. Because of that, it was not strange for Ichika to already know quite a lot about different school events, including the training camp they were currently attending. But one thing still remained a mystery to Ayanokoji. He could not understand why Ichika was willing to cooperate with Nagumo. Ichika then explained that she expected a major battle to happen between Nagumo and Ayanokoji. Because of that, she chose to side with the person she believed had the better chance of winning. According to Ichika, she and Nagumo could become a very powerful team. Both of them had high abilities, and each had their own goals they wanted to achieve. Ichika also admitted that she could sense Nagumo's strong ambition to defeat Ayanokoji. That was exactly why she became even more curious to see how their battle would end. After their conversation finished, Ichika eventually left Ayanokoji alone. Even so, Ayanokoji continued thinking about several things from their earlier discussion. Something about Ichika's words felt strange, especially when she said that she and Yagami had been directly informed by Tsukishiro about the schedules of various school activities. To Ayanokoji, that statement seemed slightly inconsistent with some of the other information he already knew. It was only a small discrepancy, but it continued to bother him. Because of that, Ayanokoji eventually decided to conduct a small investigation into Ichika. He wanted to dig deeper and find out what her true objective was, as well as how deeply she might be involved in the larger plan, possibly unfolding behind the training camp.
いじめたつもりはないけどな。
Sometime after his conversation with Ichika, Ayanokoji finally met Hashimoto. Without wasting much time, Ayanokoji decided to tell him directly about the situation. He explained that during the training camp, he would be having a personal competition against Nagumo. The reason Ayanokoji told him was actually quite simple. He did not want Hashimoto to accidentally get in the way. Ayanokoji knew that if Hashimoto was not given an explanation from the beginning, he would probably try to investigate everything on his own. If that happened, his actions might end up creating new problems that were never necessary in the first place. Because of that, instead of dealing with unnecessary complications later, Ayanokoji chose to explain the situation from the start. After hearing this, Hashimoto looked both surprised and impressed. To him, the fact that Ayanokoji had managed to attract Nagumo's attention was not something that could be taken lightly. Hashimoto understood very well that Nagumo was not the type of person who easily became interested in someone, especially to the point of feeling challenged and wanting to face that person directly. Because of that, Hashimoto began to acknowledge Ayanokoji's abilities even more. He even offered to help. Deep down, Hashimoto started to feel that Ayanokoji might be far stronger than he had appeared all this time, which made him want to become involved in this much bigger game as well. Their conversation then continued in a more relaxed atmosphere, until the topic eventually shifted to the reward Nagumo had promised. Hashimoto became curious. He wanted to know how much money, or what kind of benefit Ayanokoji would receive if he managed to defeat Nagumo. But Ayanokoji simply replied in a flat tone that even he did not know the exact amount yet.
なら、どうしてこのタイミングで見せたんだ?
The first day of matches finally began. The opening event Ayanokoji participated in was flower arranging, known in Japanese as oshibana. Curious about his choice, Nanase asked whether Ayanokoji actually knew how to do it. Ayanokoji replied that he had never really tried it before, and had only received a little guidance from Hiyori beforehand. That answer surprised Nanase. At first, she assumed Ayanokoji had chosen the event because he already had some experience with it. On top of that, Ayanokoji was the only male participant in the match. His opponent was a first-year female student. Fortunately for him, she was not very skilled at oshibana either. Because of that, Ayanokoji managed to win his first match. Hiyori immediately praised Ayanokoji's work. According to her, even though he was still a beginner, he had already managed to create a fairly good arrangement. She even felt that Ayanokoji had some talent for it. Even so, Ayanokoji modestly admitted that if Hiyori herself had been his opponent, he most likely would have lost. For now, at least he had managed to secure his first victory. Since his personal competition with Nagumo only counted individual results and not group performance, that victory became 1 full point for Ayanokoji. After the first match ended, Ryuen approached him and seemed quite pleased with the result he had just achieved. While the two were talking, Inogashira suddenly came over to see them. Ryuen stepped away for a moment, while Inogashira immediately explained why she had come. It turned out that she wanted to ask about Koenji. The leader of her group, Tatebayashi, had ordered Inogashira to bring Koenji back to join the team. Because of that, she hoped Ayanokoji could help persuade him. Unfortunately, Ayanokoji could only apologize. He knew very well that almost no one could force Koenji to do something if Koenji himself had no intention of doing it. Inogashira seemed to understand that as well. She did not push the matter any further and eventually left. Still, after returning to his conversation with Ryuen, Ayanokoji felt there was no harm in trying to meet Koenji directly. The problem was that finding Koenji was not easy. After searching for some time, Ayanokoji finally managed to learn where he was. Koenji was spending time alone in an open field. Ayanokoji approached him and explained that Koenji's group was looking for him. Just as expected, Koenji showed no willingness to cooperate at all. His response left Ayanokoji slightly confused, and he almost decided to leave and let Koenji do whatever he wanted. But before Ayanokoji could actually walk away, Koenji suddenly stopped him. Koenji said that he was willing to explain the reason behind his behavior. Before getting into that, he asked Ayanokoji a question. If the two of them took a written exam right now, who would come out as the winner? Without hesitation, Ayanokoji answered that he would win. Koenji seemed to enjoy that confidence, and then followed up with another question. What if they fought physically? Who would be the winner? This time, Ayanokoji did not give a definite answer. According to him, the outcome would depend heavily on the rules being used. Koenji clearly possessed extraordinary physical abilities, so if the two of them actually fought each other directly, Ayanokoji knew it would not be an easy match for him. Their conversation continued, and this was when Koenji finally explained why he was always so difficult to cooperate with. Koenji considered himself a perfect person who could adapt to almost any situation. From his perspective, most of the students at this school were not much different from kindergarten children. Because of that, he saw no reason to go out of his way to help them. Koenji even believed that returning to China for more training might be far more useful than continuing to spend his time studying at this school. Even so, because of certain circumstances, he still had to remain at the elite school for the time being. Koenji also realized that Ayanokoji was actually trying to persuade him for Horikita's sake. In his mind, Ayanokoji admitted that Koenji was extremely perceptive. What Koenji said was true. He could easily be considered the biggest problem for Horikita's class because he was the only student who was truly difficult to get to cooperate. Until now, Ayanokoji had continued searching for a way to change Koenji's attitude. Unfortunately, he also understood that such an effort carried enormous risks. Deep down, Ayanokoji even felt that getting rid of Koenji might be much easier than trying to turn him into a weapon that Horikita's class could use. After talking for quite some time, their conversation came to an end, and the two finally went their separate ways. After that, Ayanokoji went back to find Ryuen.
その考えでいいのか?
When he found her, Ryuen was playing on a swing while casually chatting with Asahina. Ayanokoji then joined their conversation. During their discussion, it was revealed that Ryuen dreamed of becoming a politician. She explained that ever since she was young, she had often met various political figures because her family had close connections with people in that world. Even so, Ryuen had no interest in politics at all back then. In her eyes, many politicians who frequently appeared in the media were nothing more than corrupt and boring people. Still, there was one person who managed to catch her attention. That person was Prime Minister Kojima. To Ryuen, Kojima was someone who could continue to shine even in the middle of the dirty world of politics. Because of that, Ryuen hoped that one day she could stand on the same stage as him. Interestingly, despite having that dream, Ryuen made it clear that she had no intention of seriously pursuing it for now. She even said that she would not mind if Ayanokoji was the one who fulfilled that dream instead. According to Ryuen, Ayanokoji had the ability and personality that suited the world of politics very well. Ayanokoji naturally responded to the idea casually. He rejected it and said that he simply wanted to live as an ordinary person and work like most people did. Not long after, Asahina excused herself because the next match was about to begin. After Asahina left, the topic of Ayanokoji and Ryuen's conversation shifted to Koenji. Ayanokoji admitted that so far, there was not much he could do to change Koenji's attitude. Strangely, Ryuen actually seemed quite pleased to hear that. To her, it proved that even Ayanokoji was not always capable of solving every problem that came his way. Their conversation eventually came to an end. After that, both of them returned their attention to the remaining matches on the first day.
全員が救済のポイントを払えるわけじゃない.
The second event Ayanokoji participated in was a pottery competition, and once again, he managed to win. Next, Ayanokoji participated in 2 table tennis matches. Thanks to his experience with the sport, he was able to dominate both matches and win them quite easily. The final event was an accessory making competition. Although Ayanokoji was still considered a beginner in that field, his opponent was not very skilled either. Because of that, Ayanokoji managed to secure another victory. With this result, he ended the first day with a perfect record of 5 wins from 5 matches.
付き合ってないからな.
Long story short, night finally arrived. After all the matches for the day were over, the members of Ayanokoji's group gathered together and began chatting casually while discussing the results of the matches they had just completed. In the middle of the conversation, they received some rather surprising information. Sakayanagi's group had apparently suffered 3 losses. Out of the 5 matches they played, the group had only managed to win 2. Naturally, this result made many people curious. Considering Sakayanagi's abilities and the members of her group, losing 3 times in a single day felt quite unusual. After the group discussion ended, Hashimoto asked Ayanokoji to speak with him privately. He was also curious about the reason behind Sakayanagi's poor results and asked Ayanokoji to investigate. Ayanokoji agreed. Coincidentally, he also wanted to know what had caused Sakayanagi's group to lose 3 times. To gather information, Ayanokoji decided to spend some time in the inn lobby. He hoped he might hear something from the students passing through the area. A little while later, Sanada approached him. Their conversation began when Sanada asked how Hashimoto was doing. As everyone knew, Hashimoto was currently suspected of being a traitor by the Class A students. Ayanokoji replied that so far, Hashimoto was still acting like usual and had not shown any significant changes. After that, Ayanokoji began gathering information of his own. He asked how Sakayanagi had been doing since Kamuro was expelled from school. Ayanokoji wondered whether the 3 losses suffered by Sakayanagi's group had anything to do with that incident. Sanada explained that after Kamuro left, Sakayanagi still appeared to be acting like usual. She had not shown any particularly noticeable change in her behavior. Unfortunately, Sanada did not know the exact reason why Sakayanagi's group had suffered 3 losses during the first day of the training camp. One thing he still remembered was that his group had faced Sakayanagi's group directly in one of the matches. During that match, Sakayanagi did not participate at all. Even so, that information was still not enough to explain what was actually happening. In the end, Ayanokoji did not gain any truly useful clues from the conversation. Not long after, Sanada excused himself and left the lobby.
それを求めるなというのも酷じゃないか。
When Ayanokoji was alone again, Horikita suddenly approached him. This time, Horikita talked about her plan to face Ichika. She explained that she had been training hard in martial arts for quite some time. Because of that, she had started wondering whether her current fighting ability had developed enough to surpass Ichika. Before actually challenging Ichika, Horikita wanted Ayanokoji to watch and evaluate her fighting style first. But Ayanokoji instead suggested that Horikita ask Ibuki for an evaluation. After saying that, Ayanokoji immediately pointed toward the place where Ibuki was hiding. Since her presence had already been discovered, Ibuki finally came out with an annoyed expression. Seeing the situation, Ayanokoji immediately understood what was really going on. From the beginning, Horikita and Ibuki had apparently come with the intention of asking Ayanokoji to help train them. It turned out that Horikita was not the only one who was still frustrated with Ichika. Ibuki also wanted a rematch. For her, losing to someone 1 year younger was difficult to accept. Ayanokoji understood what they wanted, but he gave them one condition. Horikita had to challenge Ichika directly, and the rematch would take place on the morning of the final day of the training camp. In addition, Ichika also had to accept the challenge. If Ichika refused, Ayanokoji would not give Horikita or Ibuki any special training. Horikita accepted the condition and promised that she would challenge Ichika. Before they separated, Ayanokoji also asked Horikita to investigate something for him. Horikita nodded and assured him that she would do it. After that, Ayanokoji, Horikita, and Ibuki returned to their respective places.
無茶言うなよ。
Ayanokoji then went to the hot spring with several members of his group. After finishing his bath, he saw Tatebayashi looking irritated. Not long after, Tatebayashi approached Koenji with an angry expression. Koenji simply pushed him aside and went straight into the room. Tatebayashi refused to give up and immediately followed him inside. Curious about what was happening, Ayanokoji and several other group members decided to peek inside the room. It turned out that Tatebayashi was trying to persuade Koenji to cooperate for the sake of the group. He explained that they really needed Koenji's contribution if they wanted to achieve better results. Unfortunately, Koenji did not care at all and immediately rejected the request. Their argument grew more heated until Hashimoto finally had to step in and calm things down. Once the situation settled a little, the other group members returned to their own rooms. A few minutes later, Hashimoto came back and explained why Tatebayashi was so determined to win. Apparently, Tatebayashi wanted to collect as much money as possible before graduating from school. Even so, one problem remained unchanged. Controlling Koenji was almost impossible.
何か私に言おうかい?
The next morning, as the second day of the training camp began, Ayanokoji went to a fairly quiet place. There, he waited for Horikita and Ibuki, as they had previously agreed. After Ichika accepted the challenge from Horikita and Ibuki, Ayanokoji began preparing their training. Before the training started, they had a short conversation. Ayanokoji then added one more condition. When the time came to face Ichika, Horikita and Ibuki had to fight her together instead of one-on-one. According to Ayanokoji, trying to face Ichika alone would be almost impossible for either of them. But Horikita and Ibuki immediately rejected the idea. Both of them felt that a two-on-one match would be boring and unsatisfying. Ayanokoji still stood by his opinion. Horikita then offered a compromise. She asked Ayanokoji to test her and Ibuki's abilities first. If Ayanokoji still believed they were not strong enough to fight Ichika one-on-one, after seeing what they could do, then they would face Ichika together. Ayanokoji agreed to the proposal. He then took a fighting stance, with his left hand in front and his right hand behind him. After that, Ayanokoji said that during the training session, he would only use his left hand. Those words immediately irritated Horikita and Ibuki because they felt that he was looking down on them. Ayanokoji then added that if they could make things difficult for him, even while he was using only one hand, it would mean they were truly capable of trying to face Ichika individually. Ibuki was the first to lose her temper and immediately launched a kick. Unfortunately, Ayanokoji avoided the attack with ease. Ibuki then tried to grab Ayanokoji's left hand, but his movements were too fast for her to follow. Using only his left hand, Ayanokoji slowly turned Ibuki's body before finally pushing her backward. After that, it was Horikita's turn to attack. Unfortunately, the result was not much different. Breaking through Ayanokoji's defense proved far more difficult than they had imagined. From that short sparring session, Horikita and Ibuki finally began to understand the reality they had to face. Their chances of defeating Ichika in a one-on-one fight were almost non-existent. Because of that, Ayanokoji decided that over the next few days, he would act as their sparring partner. Although Horikita and Ibuki did not particularly like Ayanokoji's attitude, they could not argue much. The truth was that they needed the training if they seriously wanted a chance against Ichika. In short, the sparring session that morning left Horikita and Ibuki exhausted. Horikita even admitted that she could not understand how Ayanokoji had become so skilled at fighting. Ayanokoji simply explained that he had been training since he was a child. Meanwhile, Ibuki was still irritated and promised that tomorrow she would force Ayanokoji to fight using both hands. After saying that, Ibuki left. Horikita was still suspicious and asked why Ayanokoji was actually willing to help them, but Ayanokoji simply replied that he had no other choice.
私たちのクラスで学力いいの人
After finishing his bath that morning, Ayanokoji rejoined the members of his group. There, he began to notice a strange change in the first-year male students. For some reason, ever since they had bathed together the previous night, those students had suddenly started admiring Ayanokoji and even treating him like some kind of role model. The problem was that Ayanokoji himself had absolutely no idea what had caused this change in their behavior. While they were gathered together, the first-year students even invited Ayanokoji to bathe with them again that night. Since he still did not understand what was actually going on, Ayanokoji simply agreed. Seeing the sudden change in their attitude, Ryuen became curious. She asked what Ayanokoji had done to make them suddenly admire him so much. Ayanokoji replied that he had absolutely no idea either. Hashimoto was actually surprised to hear that, because Ayanokoji truly did not realize the reason. He then explained that there was one part of Ayanokoji's body that made those male students admire him so much. Even Hashimoto admitted that he was impressed, although at the same time, he also felt a little intimidated. Hearing that only made Ryuen even more curious. Unfortunately, Hashimoto simply said that it was a secret between men.
俺を惑わすフェイク。
それにも
After finishing his meal with the rest of his group, Ayanokoji walked toward the lobby, where he ran into Sakayanagi. They briefly greeted each other before starting a conversation, and naturally, their discussion soon shifted to the ongoing training camp. Sakayanagi revealed that she did not want to spend too much time grieving after Kamuro was expelled from school. For now, she preferred to focus on finding someone who could take Kamuro's place, especially a female student who would be suitable as her new right-hand person. Because of that, Sakayanagi had not been very active in the matches during the training camp. Not long after Kito approached them, and Ichika soon appeared as well, before immediately joining the conversation. Curious about the situation, Ichika asked why Sakayanagi's group had already suffered 3 losses during the training camp. Sakayanagi calmly explained that she was not the leader of the group. Her group was being led by a third-year student, so she did not have full control over how the matches were handled. Even so, Sakayanagi made it clear that if Ichika truly intended to challenge her directly, she was ready to accept. Ichika did not seem very interested in that answer. Instead, she brought up Sakayanagi's defeat in the previous exam, which had ended with Kamuro being expelled from school. The atmosphere began to grow tense when Ichika appeared ready to touch Sakayanagi. But before she could do so, Kito quickly grabbed Ichika's hand. Tension briefly rose between them, but Ichika eventually chose to back down. Before leaving, she simply warned Sakayanagi that one day she would play with her. Ichika hoped that when that day came, Sakayanagi would be ready to use everything she had. After Ichika left, Ayanokoji also decided to leave the area. He did not want to stay too long in the middle of such openly tense circumstances.
今の段階じゃイエスとは言えないな。
The next day marked the second day of the training camp. Ayanokoji's first scheduled match was stone carving. Before the match began, Kushida approached him. Kushida praised Ayanokoji's group for winning every match on the first day. Ayanokoji returned the compliment and said Kushida's group had also performed very well by winning 4 out of 5 matches. Their only loss had come against Nagumo's group. It turned out that Kushida had participated in every match on the first day because the members of her group kept relying on her. This left her quite exhausted, especially mentally. Kushida then complained that she could not relax at all during the training camp. She constantly had to maintain her image as a good person in front of everyone around her. From there, their conversation became a little deeper as they began discussing the pressure Kushida was feeling throughout the training camp. Soon enough, the stone carving match began, and Ayanokoji's group managed to win once again. The next match was a card game that mostly depended on luck. Unfortunately, luck was not on Ayanokoji's group's side, and they eventually had to accept a loss. Ayanokoji also lost individually, making this his first personal defeat of the training camp. The problem was that in his duel against Nagumo, Ayanokoji was only allowed to suffer a maximum of 3 individual losses. Because of that, there was now much less room for mistakes. After that, they moved on to a chalk art competition. In this match, the participants had to recreate a piece of artwork on a blackboard using chalk. Ayanokoji managed to recover from his previous loss. He won his individual match, while his group also came out victorious. Then they moved on to the next match, miniature golf. This time, Ayanokoji's group had to accept a defeat. Even so, Ayanokoji still managed to win his individual match. This meant the group's loss did not affect his personal record in the duel against Nagumo. Unfortunately, things changed in the next event, which was embroidery. Ayanokoji's group had to face Koenji's group, while Ayanokoji himself was matched directly against Inogashira, who was known to be highly skilled at embroidery. The difference in their abilities was clear. In the end, Ayanokoji's group lost, and Ayanokoji also suffered an individual defeat. With that result, he now had 2 personal losses. This meant that if he lost one more time, his duel against Nagumo would immediately end in defeat. Because of that, the next match became extremely important for Ayanokoji. Fortunately, he managed to win individually in the archery match, and his group also came out victorious. The following event was glass crafting. Once again, Ayanokoji's group secured a win, and Ayanokoji also won his individual match. During this event, Hiyori showed off her artistic skills and became one of the key factors that helped their group achieve victory. After 2 full days of matches, Ayanokoji's group had completed a total of 12 events, with 9 wins and 3 losses. Meanwhile, Ayanokoji had already suffered 2 individual defeats. This meant that one more loss would cause him to lose his duel against Nagumo. From this point on, Ayanokoji could not afford to let his guard down at all. After dinner, the atmosphere at the training camp was not completely peaceful. At the time, Tokito was walking toward a meeting spot after Ishizaki had asked him to come there. But when he arrived, Ishizaki was nowhere to be seen. Naturally, this irritated Tokito. He had been called there only to be left waiting by himself. A few moments later, Ishizaki finally appeared and greeted him. Strangely, instead of explaining the reason for the meeting, Ishizaki said that he did not know why Tokito had been called there either. Hearing that only made Tokito more annoyed. But before he could complain any further, his body was suddenly shoved hard enough to slam his back against the wall. The person who did it was Ryuen. With a cold expression, Ryuen said that Tokito deserved to be punished. Tokito was shocked and immediately asked why he was being treated that way. But Ryuen did not explain right away. He simply repeated that Tokito deserved punishment. Tokito became even more confused because he did not believe he had done anything wrong. Only then did Ryuen reveal that he had received a rather suspicious report. Tokito had apparently been in contact with Sakayanagi. Hearing this, Tokito began to panic and tried to defend himself. He explained that his meeting with Sakayanagi had only been a coincidence and that they had not discussed anything important. Even so, Ryuen did not care about that explanation at all. He made it clear that no one from his class was allowed to interact with Sakayanagi for any reason. According to Ryuen, Sakayanagi was currently in a weakened state and would likely fall during the year-end exam. Because of that, he considered keeping their distance from the opposing side extremely important. Ishizaki then joined in and pressured Tokito to stop resisting. If Tokito was willing to admit his mistake and promise to remain loyal, Ryuen might still be willing to forgive him. But Ryuen's physical pressure had not stopped, and Tokito was still being held against the wall. While cornered, Tokito gave another explanation. He said that he had only intended to comfort Sakayanagi because he believed she was feeling sad after losing Kamuro. Ryuen laughed when he heard that excuse. He began mocking Tokito and implied that Tokito might actually have other intentions toward Sakayanagi. Tokito immediately denied the accusation, but Ryuen kept provoking him with increasingly vulgar and disgusting remarks. He even said that he could prepare a stage for Tokito, then continued mocking him by saying that a woman could be broken both physically and mentally if she were treated that way. After hearing all of that, Tokito's anger finally exploded. Tokito managed to push Ryuen away and immediately grabbed the collar of his shirt with both hands. Unfortunately, Ryuen quickly fought back. He drove his knee into Tokito's face before slamming him against the wall once again. Even though Ryuen claimed that everything he had said earlier was only a joke, the pressure he was putting on Tokito did not stop at all. Ryuen then told Tokito that he had one task, which was to help destroy Sakayanagi. But Tokito firmly refused the order. His refusal made Ryuen strike him hard in the stomach once again. In an instant, Tokito lost his strength, and his knees could barely support his body anymore. Even so, Ryuen kept holding him up so he would not fall. He then leaned closer and whispered that there were no CCTV cameras in that area. This meant there was nothing that could record what happened there. Tokito tried to resist again. His face was filled with hatred toward Ryuen, but in his current condition, there was not much he could do. Ryuen then gave him one final threat. If Tokito continued to oppose him, he would not hesitate to get him expelled from school. Once again, Ryuen made it clear that getting involved with Sakayanagi was a line Tokito was not allowed to cross. If Tokito still broke that rule, then next time Sakayanagi would not be the one destroyed. Tokito himself would be the target. Even after receiving such a serious threat, Tokito continued to stare at Ryuen defiantly. Seeing that attitude, Ryuen finally let him go. He even gave Tokito a chance to prepare if he truly wanted to attack. Tokito looked genuinely ready to face Ryuen in a direct fight. But before the clash could happen, Housen suddenly appeared. He casually approached while cracking his neck. Housen said that he had been looking for his senpai, Tokito, because they were in the same group. After seeing the commotion in front of him, Housen naturally became curious and immediately asked what was going on. Ryuen told him not to interfere, but as usual, Housen did not care about the warning at all. At that moment, Ryuen grabbed Tokito by the throat again and slammed him against the wall. Even after being ordered to leave, Housen remained where he was and ignored both Ryuen and Ishizaki. He even slowly began walking toward Ryuen, who was still holding Tokito. When Ryuen saw Housen getting closer, he finally ordered Albert to deal with him. Without saying much, Albert immediately stepped forward and blocked Housen's path. Housen simply spat on the ground before preparing to face Albert. From his attitude, it was obvious that he had no intention of backing down. The tension between them continued to rise. But before a fight could truly break out, someone else appeared. This time, it was Utomiya. As soon as he arrived, Utomiya immediately told Ryuen to release Tokito before calmly walking toward them. Ishizaki was about to stop Utomiya, but Housen, who was still being blocked by Albert, suddenly grabbed Ishizaki by the sleeve, as if warning him not to interfere. Utomiya then explained that Tokito was a member of his group. Because of that, he did not want one of his teammates getting hurt over something like this, especially if it could eventually cause problems for their group. Ryuen still did not appreciate the interference, and once again warned Utomiya not to get involved in his business. Even so, Utomiya did not look afraid at all. Instead, he openly went against Ryuen's order. With complete confidence, Utomiya even said that he did not want to embarrass Ryuen in front of so many people. His words clearly implied that Utomiya believed he could defeat him if they actually fought. After hearing that, Hausen immediately shouted that he would be the one to defeat Ryuen, not Utomiya. The atmosphere grew even more heated. Utomiya did not stay quiet either. In an equally loud voice, he told Hausen to shut up and stay out of it. From this exchange, it was clear that both of them had equally massive egos. Hausen looked even more irritated by Utomiya's attitude and seemed ready to beat him up right then and there. Seeing all of this, Ryuen simply laughed. He had not expected the first-year students to be filled with such explosive emotions and such a strong rebellious spirit. After that, Ryuen finally released Tokito. He even admitted that he was starting to become interested in facing first-year students like them. Ryuen did not stop there. He declared that he was ready to fight Hausen and Utomiya at the same time. Hausen immediately moved and tried to hit Ryuen with a punch, but before the attack could reach its target, Albert instantly stopped his arm. Hausen's loud shout made the situation even more chaotic. Other students, both male and female, began gathering because they were curious about the commotion. Hausen and Ryuen both clicked their tongues in annoyance. They realized that the situation had become too crowded and was starting to attract too much attention. Fortunately, Utomiya quickly took a more diplomatic approach. He told everyone who had gathered that they were only talking and that no serious conflict was actually taking place. Once the situation had calmed down a little, Ryuen finally ordered Ishizaki and Albert to back off. The three of them then left the area. On the way, Albert said that Hausen's strength might be almost equal to Ayanokoji's. Hearing that, Ryuen could only hold back his laughter. In his opinion, Ayanokoji's strength was still far above Hausen's and could not be compared to just anyone. The conversation then shifted when Ishizaki expressed his concern about the possibility of Tokito betraying them. He felt that Tokito had some kind of interest in Sakayanagi, and that could become a serious problem later on. Ryuen himself was not too worried. He was confident that Tokito was not an idiot. In his opinion, what had just happened was already enough of a warning to keep Tokito from doing anything reckless. Once the issue with Tokito was considered settled, Ryuen began shifting the conversation toward their class strategy for the year-end exam. Their main target was still Sakayanagi's class. Even so, according to Ryuen, Sakayanagi was not the most troublesome person at the moment. The person who had actually caught his attention the most was Kito. Ryuen felt that while Sakayanagi was beginning to show signs of decline, Kito could become a major threat if he ever lost control. Ryuen believed that Kito might go on a rampage in the middle of the exam and create a very troublesome disruption. Because of that, he concluded that from this point forward, they needed to prepare for every possibility. According to Ryuen, the year-end exam probably would not go smoothly. The situation could even develop into a massive conflict involving many different sides. Meanwhile, the night was getting late. After finishing his bath, Ayanokoji was relaxing on a sofa in the lobby while enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. Not long after, Sato approached him. The two began chatting casually, and their conversation gradually shifted toward the results of the various matches during the training camp. Sato seemed quite ambitious. She wanted to win every match that was still left. Unfortunately, she also complained that the motivation of her group members was starting to decline. Out of the 12 matches they had played so far, Sato's group had achieved 7 wins and 5 losses. According to Sato, the result was still fairly good, and they still had a chance to increase their number of victories. After talking for a while, Sato finally excused herself because her group had called her back. Ayanokoji then stood up as well and decided to return to his room to rest. But when he arrived, he found the room completely empty. Not a single member of his group was there. When Ayanokoji checked his phone, he found a message from Hashimoto inviting him to gather in the girls' room. Without thinking too much about it, he headed there right away. As soon as he arrived, Ayanokoji noticed that the atmosphere inside the room felt slightly awkward. The girls did not seem very energetic, and the mood between them was rather tense. Seeing this, Ayanokoji tried to lighten the atmosphere. He took out a deck of cards and invited everyone to play together. The rules were simple. Whoever was still holding the joker at the end of the game would lose. Before the game even started, Morishita already looked extremely confident and was certain that she would win. Soon enough, the game began. At first, Yamamura refused to join, but after Hiyori gently persuaded her, she finally agreed to play. This was a rather rare moment, because Yamamura usually preferred to avoid activities like this. Ayanokoji simply sat there and watched the game. After a while, he began to notice something strange. On several occasions, Yamamura's turn was completely skipped by the player sitting next to her, almost as if she was not even part of the game. Yamamura was clearly holding cards and sitting there with everyone else. Even so, the people around her seemed to forget her presence far too easily. This made Ayanokoji curious. He began wondering whether Yamamura's presence really was that faint, to the point that even during a casual card game, people could forget that she was there. After spending quite some time enjoying the card game, it was finally time for the male students in Ayanokoji's group to return to their own room. The night was getting late, and they needed to rest. But before they left, Hashimoto suddenly asked the others to go back first. He said that he wanted to speak privately with Ayanokoji for a moment. Once the room became quieter, Hashimoto immediately asked him about Sakayanagi. It turned out that he already knew Ayanokoji had been seen with Sakayanagi earlier. Ayanokoji calmly explained that the meeting had not produced any important information. Even when he tried to get something out of her, Sakayanagi was still able to hide everything extremely well. From their conversation, one thing became quite clear. At the moment, Sakayanagi's group and Ryuen's group were both near the bottom of the training camp rankings. Sakayanagi's group had only managed to win 5 out of 12 matches, while Ryuen's group had recorded just 3 victories. With results like that, the chances of either group reaching the top position before the training camp ended were almost non-existent. Ayanokoji then shared his opinion. He believed that Sakayanagi and Ryuen probably had not intended to take the training camp too seriously from the very beginning. The explanation certainly sounded reasonable. Even so, Hashimoto still did not feel at ease. He admitted that he had a bad feeling, as if something was not quite right. According to Hashimoto, the lack of preparation from both Ryuen and Sakayanagi felt rather strange. This made him start worrying that the training camp might not be as simple as it appeared. Ayanokoji tried to reassure him. He reminded Hashimoto that this activity was not a special exam. Because of that, there should not be any serious threat such as the risk of a student being expelled from school. Ayanokoji also told him that there was no need to worry too much about the situation. Most likely, everything would turn out fine. Even so, Hashimoto still could not completely shake off his uneasiness. He knew very well that Sakayanagi was someone capable of doing things no one expected. Even in a situation that seemed harmless, Sakayanagi could still create an unexpected surprise. Because of that, Hashimoto remained worried. Even the worst-case scenario, such as being expelled from school, continued to cross his mind. Still, in the end, he tried to push those worries aside and not think too deeply about them. After that, Hashimoto asked Ayanokoji to return to the room first. He said that he wanted to stop by the restroom near the lobby. Ayanokoji did not comment much, but a suspicion appeared in his mind. He believed Hashimoto probably did not simply want to use the restroom. There was a chance that he was planning something he did not want Ayanokoji to know about yet. The story continues on the 3rd day of the training camp, which is also the final day of the matches. The students are scheduled to return to school the following day. As usual, that morning Ayanokoji is having another sparring session with Horikita and Ibuki. But before the training can properly begin, Ibuki suddenly asks to go to the restroom. Because of that, Ayanokoji and Horikita are temporarily left alone. While waiting for Ibuki to return, Horikita starts talking about her match against Ichika, which Ayanokoji has arranged for the morning of the 4th day. Horikita gradually begins to understand the reason behind his decision. Apparently, Ayanokoji wants to make sure that Horikita and Ibuki have at least 2 training sessions before facing Ichika. Their conversation then shifts to the investigation Ayanokoji previously asked Horikita to carry out. Even now, Horikita still does not understand the real reason behind the request because she does not think the information she gathered is very useful. Even so, Ayanokoji appreciates the effort Horikita has put into it. Some time passes, but Ibuki still has not returned. Horikita starts getting annoyed because she has been gone for too long. Then, without warning, Ibuki suddenly appears and immediately attacks Ayanokoji with a kick while shouting. Fortunately, Ayanokoji easily avoids the attack. After seeing the way Ibuki attacks, Ayanokoji says that her fighting style is quite similar to Ishizaki's. Both of them have a habit of shouting whenever they launch an attack, which makes their movements much easier to predict. His comment makes Horikita curious. She then brings up Ayanokoji's fight against Ryuen's group on the school rooftop, something she previously heard about from Ibuki. This time, Ayanokoji does not try to deny it, and admits that the incident really happened. Horikita then asks about Yagami. In response, Ayanokoji firmly explains that he has never used violence against younger students, except in Hausen's case. After that conversation ends, the three of them continue their training. The morning session is extremely exhausting. Horikita and Ibuki are completely drained and can barely catch their breath. In contrast, Ayanokoji still looks calm and refreshed, as if the training did not tire him at all. Ayanokoji explains that he is actually tired as well. It just does not show on his face. Of course, Horikita does not really believe that explanation. In her opinion, Ayanokoji's stamina has already gone far beyond the limits of a normal human. Once the training is over, Ayanokoji parts ways with Horikita and Ibuki. He then returns to the remaining matches at the training camp.
無茶言うなよ。
今のところないわ。
Not long after, Ayanokoji goes to look for Morishita, who is scheduled to compete in a shogi match. When he finally finds her, Morishita is sitting beneath a tree with both of her eyes closed. When Ayanokoji asks what she is doing, Morishita casually explains that she is trying to communicate with nature. Ayanokoji does not understand what she means at all, but because he becomes curious, he eventually tries to imitate what Morishita is doing. Without Ayanokoji realizing it, Morishita is actually recording him. She casually captures the moment as Ayanokoji seriously tries to copy her way of communicating with nature. Ayanokoji protests about what she is doing, but in the end, there is not much he can do about it. Long story short, the two of them then walk together toward the match venue while chatting casually. Along the way, their conversation briefly turns to Sakayanagi and Hashimoto. At the same time, Ayanokoji uses the opportunity to get to know Morishita better and observe her personality more closely. After arriving at the match venue, Morishita immediately showed off her impressive shogi skills. Thanks to her performance, their group secured another victory and gained valuable points as the training camp approached its end. After that, they managed to get through the 13th to 16th matches without too much trouble. But in the 17th match, Ayanokoji finally faced a much greater challenge. Their opponent this time was Nagumo's group, the only team that had not suffered a single defeat throughout the training camp. For Ayanokoji, this match was also extremely important. So far, he had already suffered 2 individual losses. If he lost one more time, his personal duel against Nagumo would end with an unfavorable result. Coincidentally, the event this time was archery. This was the second time Ayanokoji had participated in this category, after competing in archery once before. His individual opponent this time was Ichika. Hashimoto, who was there as well, thought Ayanokoji was quite lucky because, in his opinion, Ayanokoji only had to face a first-year girl. Of course, Hashimoto had no idea just how capable Ichika actually was. The match then began. Ichika's performance immediately surprised everyone. She came close to achieving a perfect score after earning 57 points. With that result, Ayanokoji needed to score at least 58 points if he wanted to win the match. Unexpectedly, Ayanokoji really did score exactly 58 points and secured the victory. After seeing the result, Ichika even applauded him as a sign of respect. She acknowledged Ayanokoji's ability, especially since he had only started learning archery the day before. Not long after the match ended, Hashimoto approached him. He looked quite surprised after learning that Ichika had managed to score so highly. Before this, he had never expected a first-year student like Ichika to possess that level of skill.
悪いが引き取り手が見つかったら。
Long story short, all of the matches at the training camp finally came to an end. Ayanokoji's group finished the competition with 15 wins and 4 losses, placing them in 4th. Meanwhile, Nagumo's group remained at the top and successfully took first place. Even though his group did not become the champion, Ayanokoji still managed to win his individual duel against Nagumo because he never suffered the 3rd loss that would have counted as his defeat. After everything was over, Ayanokoji met Nagumo directly. The two of them talked about several things related to the results of the training camp. Nagumo praised Ayanokoji for managing to defeat him. He also admitted that Ayanokoji's ability had now reached a level that he could no longer underestimate. Nagumo even told him that all of the prize money had already been transferred to Ayanokoji. Even so, he still felt a little disappointed because he had not been able to prepare a bigger stage to test Ayanokoji's abilities. If he had done that, the third-year students would most likely have turned against him. Because of that, Nagumo could only be satisfied with seeing a portion of Ayanokoji's ability without ever truly finding out where his limits were. Before leaving, he patted Ayanokoji on the shoulder and expressed his hope that one day they might attend the same university. In return, Ayanokoji also gave Nagumo one important message before the two of them finally went their separate ways.
この場は様子見でいいんじゃない?
That night, it was already 11 o'clock. At that hour, all of the students were supposed to be in their own rooms. But while Ayanokoji was relaxing, he suddenly received a message from Hiyori. In the message, Hiyori said that Yamamura had disappeared and asked Ayanokoji to help look for her. Without thinking too much about it, Ayanokoji decided to go alone. He quietly left his room and searched around the camp while remaining careful not to be seen by the teachers who were conducting their night patrols. In the end, Ayanokoji found Yamamura near a vending machine. Yamamura looked quite surprised when Ayanokoji suddenly appeared there. As it turned out, the reason she had left the room was fairly simple. She just wanted to spend some time alone because she did not feel very comfortable being surrounded by so many people. As usual, Ayanokoji was able to adjust the way he spoke depending on the person in front of him. Gradually, his approach helped Yamamura feel more comfortable until she finally began to open up to him. Ayanokoji then told her a little about his early days after entering high school. Back then, he was also used to living on his own, but as time passed, he slowly learned how to get closer to other people and eventually managed to make more friends. Once the atmosphere became calmer, Ayanokoji began asking about the incident during the special exam that ended with Kamuro being expelled from school. Yamamura then explained what had actually happened. According to her, the decision about who would be expelled was determined through a lottery. At the time, Yamamura briefly felt that Sakayanagi actually intended to get rid of her because she herself did not have the courage to draw one of the papers. But Kamuro forced her to follow the procedure anyway. In the end, Kamuro drew the paper herself. The result written on it determined that she would be the one expelled from school. Since that incident, Yamamura had never interacted with Sakayanagi again. She felt as if she had been abandoned because Sakayanagi did not defend her at all. At the time, Sakayanagi even seemed to agree that Yamamura should have been the one to leave the school. Yamamura then admitted that she had actually wanted to speak directly with Sakayanagi during this training camp so they could clear everything up. Unfortunately, even now she still had not been able to gather enough courage. Because of that, Yamamura had only continued watching Sakayanagi from a distance, while hoping that one day she would get the chance to talk to her. After listening to her story, Ayanokoji encouraged Yamamura not to keep hesitating and to try speaking directly with Sakayanagi. Their conversation then came to an end, and the two of them went their separate ways.
で、今度の試験ではどう立ち回るつもりだ?
Meanwhile, it was already 1 in the morning. Nagumo secretly headed toward the cafeteria after receiving a call from Ichika. The moment he met her, Nagumo immediately sensed something different. In his opinion, the aura Ichika gave off felt quite similar to Ayanokoji's. Their conversation soon became filled with provocation. Without hesitation, Ichika said that she intended to beat Nagumo up as an act of revenge. It turned out that Ichika knew Nagumo had been involved in cooperating with Ayanokoji in the plan to get Yagami expelled from school. Hearing that naturally surprised Nagumo. At first, Nagumo assumed Ichika was Yagami's girlfriend, but Ichika immediately denied it and explained that her relationship with Yagami was more like that of siblings. Nagumo then told her that the plan to expel Yagami had not actually come from him, but from Ayanokoji. Even so, Ichika had already known that from the beginning. The problem was that Ichika did not dare to pick a fight directly with Ayanokoji. Because of that, she chose Nagumo instead as the target for her frustration and revenge. From that conversation, Nagumo once again realized something. Even now, he still had not been able to match the strength of either Manabu or Ayanokoji. Based on what he had seen, Nagumo was even beginning to realize that Ayanokoji's ability was probably already above Manabu's. That realization only pushed his ambition even further. Nagumo wanted to challenge Manabu first when they were both at university, and someday, he also hoped to face Ayanokoji again. But before Ichika could actually attack him, Nagumo delivered a message that Ayanokoji had previously asked him to pass along. The message was simple, but it had a much greater impact than expected. Ayanokoji wanted Ichika to know that she still had value and that she should not waste it. The moment she heard those words, Ichika's intention to attack Nagumo disappeared completely. Her mood changed at once, and the tension that had filled their conversation slowly faded away. It was at that moment that Nagumo finally realized Ayanokoji had apparently anticipated the situation from the very beginning. He was annoyed that he had once again been moved according to Ayanokoji's plan, but at the same time, he could not deny how impressed he was by Ayanokoji's ability to read situations and control the course of various events. Even so, there was one thing Nagumo knew for certain. Ayanokoji was the kind of person he might never be able to like. After that, their conversation came to an end, and Nagumo and Ichika finally went their separate ways. The story then moves on to the final day of the training camp. The atmosphere was much more relaxed this time because most of the students only needed to prepare to return home. But early in the morning, even before the other students woke up, Ayanokoji had already left his room. His purpose was clear. He was waiting for Horikita and Ibuki so they could have one final training session before facing Ichika. While waiting for them to arrive, Tsubaki suddenly appeared and approached Ayanokoji. The two of them began talking. Strangely, during their conversation, Tsubaki expressed her hope that Ayanokoji would be expelled from school. This attitude felt quite unusual because she had never shown such a desire before. From their conversation, Ayanokoji learned that Tsubaki had recently been told about the existence of a younger sister who had been missing for a long time. Her younger sister had a dark and tragic past. A short while later, Horikita, Ibuki, and Kushida finally arrived. After seeing them approach, Tsubaki decided to leave. Most likely, she did not want anyone else to hear her conversation with Ayanokoji. Meanwhile, Kushida had come because she wanted to watch the duel between Horikita and Ibuki against Ichika in person. Apparently, information about the match had leaked because of Ibuki's carelessness, and Kushida quickly took advantage of the opportunity to come and watch. After that brief conversation, Ayanokoji continued his sparring session with Horikita and Ibuki. But once the training was over, he decided not to watch their actual match against Ichika. The reason was quite simple. If Ayanokoji was there, Ichika would most likely become much more cautious. His presence could make Ichika fight more seriously, which would ultimately reduce Horikita and Ibuki's chances of winning. Because of that, Ayanokoji felt it would be better for him to stay away, so their chances of victory could increase slightly.
じゃあ同席をお願いできるかしら。
After leaving the training area, Ayanokoji contacted Sakayanagi to talk about Yamamura. In Ayanokoji's view, Yamamura was like a shadow, while Sakayanagi was the light. He believed their personalities could actually complement each other. Because of that, the troubled relationship between them should be repaired as soon as possible. At first, Sakayanagi found it a little strange that Ayanokoji seemed to be interfering so much in another class's affairs. Even so, she eventually agreed to meet Yamamura. Ayanokoji had already asked Yamamura to wait in the park. By that point, she had been there for around 20 minutes. Once everything was ready, Ayanokoji escorted Sakayanagi to the meeting place. Although Sakayanagi usually appeared calm and full of confidence, her behavior was slightly different this time. Her steps seemed heavier, and her body language showed that mentally, she was still not completely ready to face Yamamura directly. Ayanokoji only escorted Sakayanagi as far as the place where Yamamura was waiting. After that, he chose not to interfere any further. In his opinion, it would be better for Sakayanagi and Yamamura to resolve their problems on their own without a third person present. Ayanokoji then left the two of them alone.
可愛くない相手と付き合いたいと思うの。
A short while later, the training camp officially came to an end. Ayanokoji returned to his usual school life, but from now on, his schedule was going to become much busier. There were many things he needed to deal with soon, ranging from matters involving Karuizawa to issues related to Ichinose. Even though not everything went completely according to plan, the overall direction of these events was still under Ayanokoji's control. One morning, Ayanokoji contacted Horikita and asked her to meet him. Naturally, Horikita immediately became curious. Usually, whenever Ayanokoji contacted her directly, their conversation would involve the class, an exam, or some kind of strategy. But this time was different. Ayanokoji said that he simply wanted to have a casual conversation with Horikita without talking about class matters or exams. Hearing that only made Horikita even more confused. As far as she knew, Ayanokoji was not the type of person who would contact her early in the morning just for small talk. Horikita even responded with a little joke. In her opinion, if Ayanokoji only wanted to chat casually, there was no need to contact her so early. After all, they would still be in the same class for another year, so there should be plenty of opportunities to talk like this. As their conversation continued, the atmosphere between them slowly became more relaxed and felt more familiar than usual. But the light conversation did not last long. Not long after, the topic shifted back to something much more serious, which was the possibility that more students could be expelled toward the end of the year. So far, their school year had experienced relatively few expulsions compared to what could potentially happen under the school system. Even so, because the school was affiliated with the government, there was still a possibility that a large-scale selection process could take place to meet the number of students set by the government. All of that was still only a possibility. Even so, Ayanokoji said that he was prepared to support Horikita as much as possible in facing the upcoming final exam. That answer naturally surprised Horikita. In her opinion, Ayanokoji had started to change. Normally, it was very difficult to get him to fully cooperate. But this time, Ayanokoji was offering his full support on his own. As the two looked at each other, Horikita suddenly let out a small laugh. After all, the original purpose of their meeting was simply to have a casual conversation. But as usual, without realizing it, their discussion had once again returned to class matters, strategy, and exams. Ayanokoji noticed this as well. Because of that, he finally tried to change the subject. This time, he directly asked about the result of Horikita and Ibuki's match against Ichika. In truth, Ayanokoji had already heard from Kushida that they lost. Even so, he still wanted to hear the result directly from Horikita. Horikita admitted that Ichika was indeed very strong. Near the end of the match, Ichika even realized that Ayanokoji had been involved behind the scenes in Horikita and Ibuki's training. This made Horikita even more curious about the relationship between Ichika and Ayanokoji. When Horikita asked him about it, Ayanokoji jokingly said that Ichika was his ex-girlfriend. Of course, Horikita knew that he was only joking. Horikita then said that someday, she wanted to hear the truth about the relationship between Ayanokoji and Ichika. Unfortunately, Ayanokoji did not make any promises. He only told Horikita not to expect too much. Even so, Horikita still smiled after hearing his response. Deep down, Ayanokoji himself felt somewhat relieved. During all this time, he had learned many things through his interactions with Horikita. But at the same time, Ayanokoji also understood that one day, their relationship would inevitably come to an end. In the future, Horikita would still have to face many challenges that were far more difficult. Even so, Ayanokoji believed that Horikita would be able to overcome them. It was not only Horikita, their classmates had also grown tremendously. Because of that, Ayanokoji believed that they would eventually be able to support Horikita when she faced various difficulties in the future. Even so, deep down, Ayanokoji still regretted one thing. He knew that the relationship they had now might one day come to an end. Because of that, he began to wonder whether he and Horikita would still be able to interact the same way in the future.
また相談させてもらえるかしら。
無茶言うなよ。
After that moment, the story takes us back to an event that happened before the training camp officially ended. In this flashback, Hashimoto came to visit Ayanokoji in his room. His purpose was to talk about the betrayal he had committed against Sakayanagi. In short, Hashimoto revealed that a major wager between Sakayanagi and Ryuen would soon take place. Although he still did not know the exact details of the wager, Hashimoto understood that the conflict between the two of them would become something extremely decisive. From that explanation, Ayanokoji understood that Ryuen had promised Hashimoto 20 million private points in exchange for helping him defeat Sakayanagi. But it turned out that Ryuen's offer did not stop there. Ryuen had also promised something much more personal. If he managed to defeat Sakayanagi, he would bring Hashimoto into his class. More than that, Ryuen even guaranteed that he would also try to recruit Ayanokoji. All of this was meant to fulfill Hashimoto's desire to be in the same class as Ayanokoji. Naturally, this made Ayanokoji even more curious. He began to wonder what Hashimoto truly wanted from him that made Hashimoto so obsessed with making sure they ended up in the same class. But when Ayanokoji asked him about it, Hashimoto only smiled without explaining the real reason. The story then shifts to Sakayanagi. At that time, Sakayanagi was sitting calmly in a room with Mashima. Judging from her expression, she seemed to be waiting for someone. Mashima himself was confused. He had no idea why Sakayanagi had suddenly asked him to come there. Not long after, the person they were waiting for finally appeared. Ryuen entered the room, but he did not come alone. Sakagami, his homeroom teacher, was with him. Just like Mashima, Sakagami also seemed to have no idea why Sakayanagi had deliberately gathered all of them there. Once everyone was present, the meeting finally began. Without wasting any time, Sakayanagi immediately brought up Ryuen's success in deceiving Hashimoto. She already knew that Hashimoto had now betrayed her and was secretly siding with Ryuen. From there, their conversation shifted to Ayanokoji. Sakayanagi and Ryuen both realized that ever since they had confronted him, they had changed significantly and developed far beyond what they had been before. In short, both Sakayanagi and Ryuen had undergone major changes because of Ayanokoji's involvement, whether they were willing to admit it or not. Sakayanagi then smiled. She was quite pleased to see that Ryuen had finally realized for himself just how strong Ayanokoji truly was. Curious, Ryuen asked when Sakayanagi had first learned about Ayanokoji's abilities. Sakayanagi casually replied that she had known about them since Ayanokoji was still a child. Naturally, that answer immediately left Ryuen stunned. Their conversation continued. Ryuen said that he did not actually mind losing over and over again. To him, defeat was not a problem as long as he eventually achieved victory in the end. But when facing Ayanokoji, everything felt different. Ryuen realized that no matter how hard he tried, the final result might always remain the same. He felt that he might never be able to defeat Ayanokoji. That was one of the reasons he had once given up. Even so, Ryuen's fighting spirit had now returned. Once again, he had the determination to defeat Ayanokoji someday. Sakayanagi could understand that feeling because she had the same ambition. She also wanted to defeat Ayanokoji with her own hands. Their conversation then came to a halt when the two teachers in the room, Mashima and Sakagami, began questioning the real reason they had been called there. And this was where the true purpose of the meeting was finally revealed. Ryuen and Sakayanagi intended to make a major wager on the upcoming end-of-year exam. They had deliberately called both homeroom teachers to serve as official witnesses to their agreement. Whoever lost the end-of-year exam, whether it was Ryuen or Sakayanagi, would have to leave the school. Naturally, Mashima was shocked when he heard this. The school had not even announced what format the end-of-year exam would take, yet Sakayanagi was already willing to put her entire school life on the line in a single match. Even so, Sakayanagi showed no hesitation at all. In her opinion, the type of exam they would face was not important. No matter what form the exam eventually took, she was still willing to risk everything in her battle against Ryuen. At this point, both Ryuen and Sakayanagi had completely made up their minds. Behind her smile, Sakayanagi then realized something much bigger. Because of this wager, Ayanokoji's plan to balance the power among the classes would most likely fail. Even if Ayanokoji eventually decided to transfer to Ichinose's class, in order to create a balance of power among all four classes, that balance might not last for long. The reason was simple. If either Ryuen or Sakayanagi was truly expelled after the end-of-year exam, the balance among the four classes would immediately change in a dramatic way. So that was the recap of Volume 11 of the Classroom of the Elite Year 2 light novel. The end of the training camp brought many important developments, from Ayanokoji and Horikita growing closer, to the extreme wager between Sakayanagi and Ryuen that could destroy the balance among all the classes. For now, it feels like there is nothing else that needs to be explained, because everything is already clear. So, just wait for the continuation of the story in the next volume.